every time I get obsessed with something, I want to go back and find out why and how it happened, sort of its origin story. Because sometimes I think obsessions are awesome. Like when I got obsessed with guitar, I mean, it's all I do now. So I'm really glad that that happened. But I also think of some unhealthy obsessions that some of us have. Like I visited my grandma a few years ago, and I remember she had all these paper towel rolls everywhere, just like bags and closets full of paper towels. And I asked her, why are you so obsessed with collecting paper towel rolls? It's strange, you know? And she's like, well, I think it's because when I was a kid, she lived through the Great Depression, there was a scarcity of paper towels. So now whenever I see them at the store, I just buy them up. And so that made me think, okay, are some of my obsessions really unhealthy? Because to tell you the truth, I have drawers and closets full of effect pedals. And I thought, okay, how did this obsession start? And I traced it all the way back to the beginning of my guitar journey, and I wanted to share with you how it came to be. So you may have heard the story before on my other videos, but when I was about 12, turning 13, my brother started playing guitar, and he bought this Harmony Les Paul knockoff guitar and a huge PA system head and speaker cabinet. It wasn't supposed to be for guitar, but that's what it was sold to him as. He played for a little while. He could play a couple Metallica riffs and stuff, and then he kind of gave it up, and then I started playing his gear, and he would get mad at me until I finally bought it off of him. Then he wasn't so mad. So for $150, I had the guitar, the amp, and a guitar cable, and that was it. Since the PV was a PA system, it had basically volume and reverb, and that was pretty much it. But it wasn't the effect I really wanted. You know, I usually had a clean sound going like this. That's a riff I played all the time when I first started. But it got to the point where I was kind of bored with that sound. I wanted to sound like Metallica songs or Megadeth or Testament, and I wasn't getting any distortion. I heard from somebody that if you slashed your speaker with a razor blade, you could get distortion. So I actually did that. I did a whole video on it, and it wasn't the result I was looking for. And I always wanted my guitar to sound crystally, is what I would say. It's like the Testament sound in a lot of the New Order songs. They have a really cool chorusy, clean sound. I didn't know it was called chorus, so I just said it sounds like crystals. I also really love the wah pedal, and I'm like, oh, how do they get that sound? So right off the bat, I was intrigued at the idea of altering this dry, plain sound. I'd play one and it would sound like this. I played it much worse than that, but it was just dry and boring. So one day we somehow got a ride to Guitar Center, and back then there was only one in a city called Roseville in Minnesota. So it was a big deal to go there because we lived pretty far from it. So we got there, and I remember looking in the counters, and they had all of the pedals lined up. They also had a pedal board. It was a Boss pedal board where you could just sit down and play on it, and you could try them all. Usually people turned them all on just to hear what it sounded like. And my eyes immediately went to the heavy metal pedal because, you know, I love heavy metal. I want to sound like my heavy metal bands that I love. That must be the pedal for me. Well, the guy there knew I couldn't afford it. I talked about this a little bit in my last video. So he gave me this little booklet, and it's a Boss Pocket Dictionary where it talks about all their newest pedals. And then there's some chains, like pedal chains, where you could sound like certain artists. If you haven't watched my last video, I talk all about it, and I do some demonstrations with it. So I went home with the booklet, and I just basically memorized the whole thing. You know, I was memorizing the names of the pedals, what they did, the chains that they suggested. It was a lot of fun. It was like finally homework that I enjoyed. And it took a long time before I was finally able to afford my first pedal. I saved up allowance. I did a lot of begging of my parents, a lot of digging through the couch cushions. And before I knew it, I had just enough to buy it. So I had to beg for another ride to a different music store called Crazy Jim's, which is in Anoka, Minnesota. My best friend's mom drove me and my best friend to Crazy Jim's, and I remember going in and buying the pedal, and I was on cloud nine. You know, as soon as he handed me over the box, I just couldn't believe I was actually holding it. So we went back and we were driving home, and I think my best friend was a little bit jealous and a little petty at the time, and he took the pedal and he stuck it out the window as we were driving and started like throwing it up and down, going, I might drop your pedal, I might drop it. And I was just so mad. I was like, who needs enemies, you know, when you have best friends like this? But I finally got it home and I plugged it in. This isn't the exact heavy metal pedal. I bought this one to replace the old one. I'll tell you why I don't have that one in a second. But I was happy with the sound at first because I'm like, I finally have distortion. It's not the best sounding distortion, as you'll hear in a couple seconds here, but it's got a tearing type of quality to it. It's almost too extreme for a lot of music. So I'll play a couple riffs on it that I think I must have played when I first started on it, but let's see how it sounds. I'll hook it up. So of course I turned the distortion knob all the way up because I was like, I'm finally going to sound like Metallica. So here's the tone. Here's clean. It's pretty much what my PV sounded like. Here's with the heavy metal pedal. I almost teared up when I first did that because finally my palm mute sounded good. Before, palm muting sounded like this. But now it was sounding like this. I didn't want to stop playing guitar that night, but I had to go to bed because the next day I was going to go to my dad's trailer. He lived out of town and we would visit him every 2 weeks. And I didn't have an amp up there or any way to amplify myself, but I still wanted to bring my pedal with me. That's how obsessed I was right off the bat. So I couldn't use it, but I brought it with me. So I brought the harmony guitar, the heavy metal pedal, and my Ozzy Osbourne tribute book. And I knew it was going to be a long weekend because all I wanted to do was come back home and play the pedal through my amp again. But I had to wait. And by the way, that first night, I played the pedal for so long and it was feeding off the 9-volt battery because I couldn't afford an adapter back then. And I made the rookie mistake of going to bed with it plugged in still. And so the battery drained completely. So I could even play the pedal the next morning before I went to my dad's, and I was so bummed out about it. But talk about learning something the hard way, leaving the pedal plugged in on the input and all of a sudden waking up to a dead battery. So getting that first pedal satisfied me for a while, but my obsession kept growing. I kept thinking that Testament sound, and that Metallica sound. Whenever they go to clean sound, it sounds like crystals. How do I get that? So from reading that pocket dictionary, I got a clue that it was called a chorus pedal. And I ended up getting the CE2 chorus pedal, which looks like this. This one's pretty ratty. With this pedal, I finally had a decent clean sound. So what I was used to? And now I had this sound. Isn't that beautiful? The CE2, we're going to take a deep look at it when I do my pedal series coming up. One of my favorite chorus sounds of all time. I could finally do the crystally Testament sound. Before it would sound like this. And now I was getting this. Money was very scarce for me. I was lucky to have the 2 pedals that I had. And in order to upgrade my distortion pedal, I had to trade in the heavy metal pedal that I love so much. So I did some research. I read up on the turbo distortion pedal, and it sounded like the best fit for me at the time because I wanted to move up the chain, And so I believe I traded in the heavy metal pedal, paid some extra money, and got the turbo distortion. That was a big thing back then, trading in your old pedals or putting them on consignment till they sold and then upgrading from there. I think about everyone these days that are fortunate, I think it's fortunate enough to have a multi-effects unit right off the bat, and you have all the pedals that you could ever want in that box. For me, I think I had such a unhealthy, now I'm starting to think it's a healthy obsession with these pedals because I didn't have that right off the bat. I had to think about my next pedal. Each pedal was special. I had to learn everything about each one. I didn't just skip from one to the next to the next. These took a long time between pedals. And, that's kind of laughable if you think about nowadays, you just switch to the next preset and you have a different tone. So I believe scarcity played a huge part in my obsession. Here's the pedal I eventually upgraded to, the turbo distortion. I love the idea of having 2 different settings, the turbo setting 1 and 2, and then you could actually hook up a remote to change between the 2 types of turbo distortion, which is kind of strange. So I'm going to compare the heavy metal to this one. We're going to be doing a lot of this when I do the pedal chaining and the pedal comparisons in the future, but let's just do a little bit of one now. So here's the heavy metal pedal again. I played a lot of Metallica back then, so this is turbo setting 2. Let's try turbo setting 1 just because I forgot what it sounds like. So I could see having a remote switch if you want to go from that, and then for your leads, you want to blast into the setting, the number 2 setting. I could totally see that being relevant. But I just have never used the remote switch, but I've always been fascinated by it. And I'll mention only one other pedal that I got after these pedals. I bought the compression sustain pedal. It's called the compression sustainer. And I remember the dark blue color. I just thought it was a really cool looking pedal. And someone told me to get that if I wanted my solos to sing more, for the sustain to happen, to be able to hold out those high notes. And the first time I played the Fade to Black intro solo with the compression sustainer, my whole world changed. I'm actually going to go grab it right now. I wasn't going to put this in the video, but I want to hear that again. I'll be right back. See how compressed that is? Now, add chorus to that. That's a great sound. Now, I was talking about the solo part though, so let's do that. We're going to add turbo distortion. I was so happy to be able to sustain notes like that. So yeah, these first few pedals really threw me into that pedal obsession, and I was just in heaven for a while, just really getting to know each one of them, getting so excited whenever I added a brand new one to the chain. And I think that's a huge reason why I want to do this whole effect pedal series. So on the main website, theartofguitar.com, I'm going to be putting all the videos up there. I'll be dropping a few here on YouTube as well. We're going to do the distortion series first. We're going to talk about all the distortion pedals I have, and then show you the differences between overdrive, distortion, fuzz, etc. And then we'll do a delay series, chorus, all the modulation pedals, and then the fringe pedals, the ones that are really hard to categorize. We're going to do those last. And then I'm also going to be putting them in different combinations so you can hear what it sounds like, kind of like what I did right here. And I'll have a diagram of all the pedals that we're going to be putting together. And then we're going to change the order in the chain just to see how that affects pedals as well. So it's going to be a very informative, fun journey for me to do this. So I'll drop the first video here on YouTube, and then I'll announce when all the rest of them come out on the website, and we'll take it from there. So thanks for watching, and let me know if you have an effect pedal obsession and how that started. I'd really like to hear all of your stories as well. So we'll see you there or at the next video. Thanks for watching.